welcome back to FANSPLAINED, a media criticism podcast with Ryan and Em. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Em.
In this episode, we're taking another MCU hiatus to jump into the larger Marvel film multiverse. This time we're digging into the X-Men pseudo-reboot, pseudo-prequel films, beginning with X-Men First Class. It's the 5th X-Men film release, 4th is a team title, but chronologically it poses a very interesting problem.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. And we'll get into the timeline stuff with the next episode, because that's when it really starts getting very messy.
Yes.
The problem with the film, production-wise, is that at the time of its release, it was intended to be a full reboot of the X-Men film series, and is later sort of drawn into canon, sort of retconned, sort of used as a retcon.
They more or less ended up using Days of Future Past to retcon The Last Stand.
I mean, we'll get to that with the next episode when we do Days of Future Past, because it's messy.
But I mean, it's debatable whether they meant to use this one to lead into that.
Initially, no. It was meant to be a full-on, straight-up, clean-cut reboot. It was when they started making the sequel that they decided not to do that.
Oh,
that's why
God.
It gets messy there, not quite here, but it's still part of what makes this really confusing.
Spoilers, they should have just left it as its own thing.
Yes, but we'll dig into the timeline, what we feel the actual timelines actually are.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mess. There's a reason why we did these separate from the original trilogy, if you will,
yes,
of the X-Men movies, and why we did them separately from the Wolverine ones, which are still very intrinsically tied into the original trilogy, even if they argue with it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why we did these separately, is because technically they kind of form their own thing, even if they connect back in some weird places. That said, X-Men First Class was released in 2011, and it was produced by 20th Century Fox, like previous X-Men titles before it, and all of them after, up until recently, because Fox owned the rights to them.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. It has sort of a troubled production history, owing mostly to the fact that this project was actually born out of the obviously now scrapped X-Men Origins Magneto, meant to follow after X-Men Origins Wolverine. So what they originally wanted to do after X3, when they had that kind of tease with Magneto maybe getting his powers back, maybe not, was that they wanted to do a Magneto solo movie. That was originally what they were planning on doing after Wolverine. That is not what happened, because it got stuck in production hell for various reasons, and eventually they finally decided that they wanted to do this, and so a lot of the story that would have been in the X-Men Origins Magneto movie got put into this, because it is technically an Origins for Magneto movie. It's just an Origins for X-Men rather than just Magneto.
Yeah.
So X-Men Origins Magneto was scrapped due in large part to the Writers Guild of America strike in 2007 to 2008. However, by 2008, once the strike was over, X-Men First Class as a project, now intended to be a vehicle to introduce new characters, new powers, whatever, was contingent on the success of X-Men Origins Wolverine. Around this time is when the story was pushed forward from the Magneto origin setting of 1939 to 1955, so they really wanted to just do Magneto and Auschwitz.
Which would have been awful.
We get enough of that in First Class, and it never verges on too much, at least for me. No. But I feel like trying to do a whole movie like that would have been a little tacky, at best.
At best. I feel like what we got in X-Men First Class was just the right amount without...
Just enough to give you the motivation without capitalizing on a very extremely real tragedy.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they didn't do this.
Me too.
So they pushed that from 1939 to 1955 forward to 1962, now pairing Xavier and Magneto together against a common enemy. So
Kevin Bacon.
It eventually became the X-Men First Class that we know.
They paired him
yes,
against the common enemy, Kevin
Bacon.
Yeah.
So, yes, now we have solved the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon for our MCU stuff. He's right here.
Yeah, because we
The
finally
end.
have him.
The end,
Boom.
he's right here.
And he made a really, really lasting impression, honestly,
Yes.
because his mutant was exceptionally,
I mean, we'll get to that.
exceptionally chaotic, I guess.
Yes,
Is the best way
he
to
is
say it.
chaotic as hell.
Jesus.
So in addition to the contentious production, the writing credits for First Class are also a bit of a mess, basically because it was originally a completely different project from what it ended up being.
Here's my shock face.
I know, right? Attribution for the film still goes to Sheldon Turner, who wrote the treatment for X-Men Origins Magneto. So Turner is the one who basically wrote the Magneto in Auschwitz meets a young soldier, Charles Xavier. It feels out of character for Xavier. It feels tacky to just set that much of it in a concentration camp.
Yes.
I'm glad that this movie did not get made the way that it sounded like it was originally going to get made.
It sounded like a...
I mean, like, I'm very into Nazi Hunter Magneto. Don't get me wrong. I love that.
That was a great bit in this movie, but this idea just sounds like a trash fire from beginning to end.
Yeah, it sounds like it could have been done in a very poor way, and it probably would have been.
Because looking at Wolverine Origins, I'm sorry, can you imagine that kind of quality being put to that script?
I'm
what the hell?
Well, to be fair, it didn't have the same writers on it, thank God.
I don't trust it either way.
Yeah, so, however, writers Jamie Moss and Josh Schwartz were hired for treatments during the transition of the project into First Class, and their contributions remain uncredited. So basically, they gave a story credit to Sheldon Turner. I don't believe that they gave them a screenwriting credit. I could have that wrong, but I think I have that right. But they, like, the writers in the middle basically got lost in the shuffle, unfortunately. In the end, the film credits Turner and Bryan Singer, whose problematic everything we've addressed in previous X-Men episodes.
Yeah.
We're not going to address it in this one because he doesn't have a huge role in this movie.
Thank God.
Fuck. For the story, and it lists writers Ashley Edward Miller, Zach Stentz, Jane Goldman, and Matthew Vaughn. The latter would also be hired to direct the film.
Thank God again.
Mm-hmm. So while Miller and Stentz reworked the script, however, Singer would drop out of directing the project in 2010, blessings in disguise, opting to work on Jack the Giant Killer.
Jesus.
What a decision for him. I mean, it was a good thing for us. But it was bad decision for him.
A bad decision for everybody else involved.
Yeah, that was a terrible movie. Vaughn was eventually considered due to his work on Kick-Ass. He was not actually the first person that they thought of to replace Singer, but they saw Kick-Ass and they're like, oh, you know how to do, like, indie comic movies. Yeah, we want that. And that's eventually where they came around with that. So Vaughn was on record saying, I got my cake and ate it, managed to do an X-Men movie and a Bond thing and a Frankenheimer political thriller all at the same time.
Yeah, he did.
And I agree. It's a great movie.
It is.
I feel like the rest of them kind of lost it because they really didn't know what Vaughn was going for with the period piece thing. And so they all try and be separate period. They all tried to be like separate period pieces, and really anything after Days of Future Past doesn't quite work in that respect, which we'll get to in subsequent episodes. But it's a thing that makes the X-Men timeline extremely tricky, even if you're just considering the reboot movies.
Like, we have had so many discussions on this motherfucking timeline.
We'll get to that mostly with Apocalypse, because that's where it starts breaking down and not making a lot of sense.
I'm just stating for the record that
we have and we've tried to figure this out many times.
So many times.
It's frustrating. So Vaughn then rewrote with screenwriting partner Jane Goldman on the final draft of the film that we eventually got. So Vaughn compared X-Men First Class to Batman Begins in terms of a fresh reboot and origin.
Not untrue.
Not untrue. And he also compared it to Star Trek, which did the same thing, but also keeping certain homages to the original material intact.
Can I just say, as another note, I really actually did love the new Star Trek
I know
reboot.
you did.
That first movie was really good.
I still think that, yes, parts of it definitely have the J.J. Abram problem.
Yeah.
Fine. I agree. I feel like that's a little more obvious when you get into the second Star Trek film. But that's not here or there.
I actually really love the lens flare. I love that the Enterprise looks like the inside of a overly lit Apple,
I mean, it should.
Store. Yeah.
It should.
It should.
It's supposed to be this brand new, exciting, amazing, flashy technology. I'm very into it, but that's neither here nor there. But he is right.
It does have a very similar feel, though, to that first Star Trek movie, to Batman Begins, where it's like, this is something new, but it's familiar.
Mm-hmm. Whereas different. Batman Begins was just completely new. We just took it and we just rebooted everything. Like, screw it.
It was different, but again, you knew kind of what you were getting. You knew, you were familiar with the story, familiar with the characters, and it's like, this is really exciting. I like this.
He also, funny story, also originally considered, like, including dream sequence fights, very likely to do with Emma and Charles, because I can't imagine these having really to do with a whole lot of other people in this movie, considering who has what powers. I would assume that it's the telepaths. Mm-hmm. That would make the most sense to me anyway.
Yeah.
But they scrapped those because Inception came out in 2010 in the middle of production for this movie, and they saw the dream sequences in that and went, oh shit, they're going to think we're ripping this off, and scrapped them.
Well, I'm sure Satoshi Kon looked at Inception and was like, hey!
Excuse you, this is my anime.
I'm like, hey, I know this shit. I did this!
Which, I mean, fair. I love them both.
I love them both, too. I have held a torch for Inception for how many years now?
They can only do so many Nolan homages in one movie, though, without looking like they're just trying to rip Nolan off.
It's true. And,
to be fair.
And honestly, I don't think they really needed the dream sequences.
No. I would have liked to see more with Charles and Emma specifically.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to see some kind of telepath fight. I would have really enjoyed that. But I really love this film the way that it is, and it's so tight, and it would have been just it
would have gotten bogged down.
It would have gotten bogged down and stuff.
I feel like Vaughn, especially when we went to see The King's Man, I think Vaughn has just such a special particular flair that's just his, that
especially for period pieces.
Yes.
He's got a very Guy Ritchie take on period pieces, and I really, really love it.
But he makes them look good. He has attention to detail. He has great cinematographers all the time.
He knows how to do comic relief and things.
It's really good.
Yeah. So Goldman called it a, quote, alternative history for X-Men, which again is also not entirely wrong, but that ends up being a little more true once you get into the retcon of a reboot of a retcon of a whatever. Inception. Retconception.
There we go.
Classifying it as a reboot without scrapping all of the lore, which is largely what Vaughn was trying to describe with the Star Trek stuff. Because you keep the lore intact, especially with old Spock showing up, right? Yeah, so...
But you're also allowing it to do its own thing at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the ultimate balancing act, I feel like. And there is... These movies have proven there is a way to do it. You just have to, give a shit and actually have enough creativity to get it done.
Yeah. This was also Vaughn's attempt to invoke Bond aesthetic and themes, especially with Magneto, who he said, he was talking about Fassbender specifically. He wrote that in a way that he wanted Fassbender's, cool to evoke a lot of feelings or reminiscence of Sean Connery's Bond.
I mean, that turtleneck he wears through a lot of it.
Everything is so mod. I love it so much. But I mean, you see that, and then he goes off to make the Kingsman or the King's the Kingsmen. The Kingsmen. Sorry,
the first one.
Different movie. Too many titles that sound exactly the same. That is originally why Vaughn doesn't actually return to direct Days of Future Past, is because he was busy making The Kingsman.
Well, I wish he had returned to do Days of Future Past.
I do as well, but you can definitely see that Bond thing carrying over from this to that. Yeah. Especially since the original comic for Kingsman was largely based on Bond.
Yeah.
Harry was basically just supposed to be Bond. Comics Harry was. Movie Harry is a very different character. The Kingsman movie is extremely different from the comic book. Thank God.
Thank God.
Anyway, neither here nor there either, but the Bond thing just keeps carrying over for a while.
Well,
for him.
He's clearly a fan.
I mean, Charles would be too. Fight me. Fight me. So this movie also, story-wise, resurrects this old comics concept of mutation due to radiation, with Shaw mentioning children of the atom versus evolution in his, big Bond villain speech. I went over this with you earlier about how I had this sudden revelation this afternoon that it doesn't really make a lot of sense unless you're intentionally putting your own twist on this as he's just using this as propaganda or whatever, because even he would have to know this because he was a mutant that existed before this, but mutants clearly existed in this movie before the atomic bombs did.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he just means radiation in general. I don't know.
The bombs didn't drop until 45.
Yeah,
and Erik
Magneto existed,
yeah.
Charles existed, Shaw existed, Raven existed. A lot of these other kids were still born right around then, so I don't know.
Well, I told you when you started going off about this, I'm like, number one, I think you're overthinking it, and number two, I think Shaw basically said this as like a throwaway line to try and justify him literally trying to bomb the whole world.
I mean, it's kind of like Magneto trying to turn everyone into a mutant, even though he knows that it doesn't actually work.
Yeah,
I get it.
I think that's what
I get it, but at the same time, like, if you're just gonna list that as like a story point,
I think it was...
But we just forgot about this later.
I think it was kind of more of just a reference to Children of the Atom.
I know it was.
And in the script proper, he's using it as, like, his justification. That, well, you know
mutants will survive radiation like cockroaches.
Yeah. Or mutants will survive radiation, or it's his way of trying to mutate the rest of the normie population.
I mean, maybe. I feel like that. I feel like there was just
to do that.
I feel like there was just a little bit of a hole.
He's crazy
where we
enough
could have
to
just
do that.
clarified that a little bit, because
I mean, granted, no,
straight up, we shouldn't have to extrapolate this much.
I shouldn't have to infer this much on a single line and all of this, to, explain this to anybody.
No, because if you think about it, no, it doesn't make a lot of sense if he's being serious.
No.
It doesn't. Like, what radiation is he referring to? I have no idea.
The radiation that's going to turn everybody into the Mad Max mutants, obviously.
Witness me.
Thunderdome!
I mean, look, Nicholas Holt's in the movie.
Shiny and chrome. We love Fury Road in this dojo.
That said, summary-wise, the world is slowly but surely being introduced to humanity given additional powers beyond the norm, mutations alluding to the evolution of humanity into something more. This is illustrated by the stories of 3 young mutants. You have Erik Lensher, a boy with the ability to manipulate metals, and a survivor of concentration camps. Charles Xavier, a telepath and a burgeoning scientist living in upstate New York, and Raven, a shape-shifting girl with naturally blue skin and scales, who was adopted by Xavier even though he's, 10.
Yeah, he's a child, and he wants
maybe
to
13. I don't know. He's very young.
He's a child wanting to adopt another child.
If you really, really think about it, he probably telepathically manipulated his mother into doing that, and I don't want to think about that too hard.
I'm pretty sure that's the implication. Is that he did...
I mean, given that they also imply that his mother is really, hands-off and doesn't really pay attention to a whole lot. Who knows if she even noticed?
Because, they did bring back... They did show how he, wiped Moira's
mind.
Memory.
Mm-hmm.
So, if he could do that, imagine...
He probably did it to his mother, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised by this. Whatever.
Charles.
It doesn't.
Charles. We need to have
think
a talk.
about it. Yeah, his moral line is really not here in this movie, and that's why I love him, because they did it in a way that didn't make him as much of an asshole as comics Charles Xavier, who no one likes.
Oh,
he's awful.
I don't like it.
This Charles I stan, and I'm not sorry.
I will love Pat Stew's Charles forever. I will. But I really, really, really love James McAvoy's Charles.
McAvoy is perfect.
He is perfect.
He's perfect.
He's perfect as Charles.
I'm not sorry. Anyway, that was for acting and not summary. These 3 emerge into adulthood. Their stories begin to converge specifically due to their gifts. Erik has spent several years as a Nazi hunter on the path to find the man who killed his mother and tortured him as a child. This man, Sebastian Shaw, is also a mutant, but is
His initials are SS.
Yeah, they sure are. They
A
sure are.
A little on the nose, like that weird helmet of his.
Oh my god. And they supposedly made that to fit his face.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Is also a mutant, but is bent on control, making plans to manipulate the world stage with the aim to use the Cold War to eradicate humanity. Mutants supposedly being the only people to survive due to their apparent link to radiation, like I just went over. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but he's crazy, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't
crazy
matter.
In the colloquial sense, not the actual diagnosis sense.
He's deranged. He's a megalomaniac.
Thank you for finding new words for this, because I keep leaning on the bad ones.
He is a megalomaniac. Of course, he will say whatever he can to justify it, and it makes sense in his warped mind.
Yes, it does. It does. But yeah, he's
that.
Yes. Shaw's machinations draw Charles and Raven into the CIA after Xavier is sought out by Agent Moira McTaggart after she witnessed Shaw and company making threats with a colonel and attempting to manipulate decisions in the U.S. war room. This has them crossing paths with Erik, who is also trying to find and, quote, subdue Shaw. He's not. He's trying to murder Shaw.
He wants to murder, death, kill him.
I mean, fair. Fair.
The most fair motivation ever.
Honestly. Working for the CIA, Charles and Erik begin to seek out other mutants with the use of a CIA installation meant to amplify Xavier's telepathy. From this, they draw together a team of young mutants to align against Shaw and hopefully avoid the man's attempt at all-out nuclear war. Or atomic war, I guess, at the time. Whatever. War with a lot of scary weapons that would kill a lot of people.
The Children of the Atom War.
Yes, that.
Age of Atomtron.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Infinitely better movie. Don't shame it like that. Rude. So, primary acting, you have Michael Fassbender as Erik / Magneto. James McAvoy as Charles Xavier.
Ooh.
Jennifer Lawrence as Raven / Mystique, Nicholas Hoult as Henry McCoy / Beast, Rose Byrne as Moira McTaggart, Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw, as we've noted a few times now, Eddie Gathegi, I think I said that right, God help me, as Darwin, Zoe Kravitz as Angel, Lucas Till as Alex Summers, Caleb Landry Jones as Banshee, and January Jones as Emma Frost. And then you have secondary cast with Oliver Platt as, he wasn't given a name, he's just the man in the black suit. He's just the CIA guy who owns the mutant installation.
Yeah, he's an agent.
He was not given a name. I'm surprised he was not given a name. You have Alex Gonzalez as Riptide. Technically, he was credited as starring, but, like, he really isn't there a whole lot, so I just kind of threw it in secondary, because it's kind of like Azazel. They were there, but they weren't really there. You had Jason Fleming as Azazel, Glenn Morshower as Colonel Hendry, Michael Ironside as that, like, American guy on the boat, lobbying
on a
weapons
boat
at Russians over Cuba. And then you had Matt Craven as the CIA director. And then you have a bunch of cameos in this movie as well. You have Annabelle Wallace as the chick with the heterochromia that Charles is hitting on in the bar. You had Ray Wise. He showed up again. Laura Palmer's dad. Like, some dude in the war room. I'm not, like, the Secretary of Defense or something like that. I just found it funny because he was the head of Roxxon and Agent Carter.
Leland Palmer, what are you doing here?
Right. He owns everything. Who knows?
He does, apparently.
I mean, actually, that was Audrey's dad, but we'll get to that when we do Twin Peaks, I guess.
We are going to be doing Twin Peaks.
Someday.
Because I still have to watch most of it.
Yes. Then you had Hugh Jackman in the best cameo in the movie. The
best cameo.
You had Rebecca Romaine. And then you had no Stan Lee in this movie because filming was too far away from wherever he was at the time, so he couldn't actually make it.
Aww.
So they planned on it, but he couldn't make it work for this one. So I had some additional notes on acting before we get into our opinions on people's acting. So you had... my brain just broke.
Brain
Vaughn
fart.
wanted his friend / director, like he's a separate director, Dexter Fletcher, for Platt's part, actually. But the studio thought there were too many British people in the movie. And then Dexter Fletcher declined so that he could go direct another movie.
There are too many.
There's too many British people in this movie, even though half of it's set in Oxford, so of course they're going to be British people in this extremely mod 1960s Bond-esque movie.
There's too many fucking Brits on this studio lot. Get them off.
That's kind of what they thought, yeah. They also had Colin Firth on the ideal shortlist for Sebastian Shaw. Before hiring Kevin Bacon.
No. Sir, no. You already played a Nazi in Conspiracy.
But he got his wish for Colin Firth as a starring role when he went and did Kingsman anyway, so it's fine.
That's the better role.
We got the better Colin Firth
role.
out of it.
I'm like, no, sir. You and Kenneth Branagh in that movie were beasts. You were beasts. You were convincing. You were disturbing and horrifying. You didn't need to be another one.
Yeah.
That's it.
Fair. It's fair. You also had Broadway actor Benjamin Walker, originally cast for Beast, but he actually turned down the role for a stage role in this Broadway production called Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson.
Well, okay.
I don't know anything about it. I just know that he turned down a role in this movie to go do a Broadway show.
Well, that's...
You do you, bro.
That's what he wanted.
There were also rumors of Alice Eve being cast for Emma, but no deal was actually ever made with her.
To be honest, she might have been a better Emma.
To be fair, I think some of Emma's stuff is her writing. Because I know that January Jones can act in other things.
Yeah, she acted just fine in Mad Men from what I've seen.
She's just very flat in this movie. She's not really given a whole lot to do. Except, her facial expressions are always just stoic.
Except have her boobs out.
I mean, that's Emma Frost for you.
Baby!
At least that part was accurate.
She definitely does.
But I really wanted, like, evil Emma Frost. Because I love evil Emma Frost.
See,
like, the kind that, like, fucks around with getting a kid a horse and then kills the horse.
My dream...
kind of stuff. Like, I love bitchy old comics Emma Frost.
Dream casting for Emma Frost for me would have been Natalie Dormer.
I mean, fair, because she can pull off evil bit of it real hard. That's why we liked her as Moriarty.
Well, I mean, she can play the evil bit, but she can also play the very persuasive bit, which is also very Emma.
But Emma wasn't really written as the femme fatale that she should have been.
No, she was not.
She should have been a Bond girl in this, and she really was not.
She should have been the femme fatale that is usually in Bond movies. That's who she should have been.
Yeah, but she was not that. She was not that. She was basically just a side piece for Shaw until...
She dressed like a Bond girl plenty, but...
Yeah, a lot of her costuming was very reminiscent of that bikini from that one Bond movie. The white bikini that, like, zipped in the front.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it reminds me of. Because she also has that one dress that zips in the front exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also the belts.
Yeah, she looked like a Bond girl. She didn't really do a whole lot, though. And I don't know how much of this was anything. It could have been the direction. It could have been her. It could have been her writing. I don't know.
I don't know.
But it was kind of disappointing.
It was
disappointing. I really wanted more out of Emma. There are very few things that I drag this movie for, aside from Emma and, everybody's favorite, dragging Darwin's death when... It makes no sense. He should have been able to adapt and not die.
Yeah.
But go off, I guess. Of course you had to kill the one black guy on the cast.
Yeah, literally explode him because
reasons, I guess.
I mean, you gave him the mutant ability
he was
to
too
literally
OP.
Adapt.
Again, but if he was too OP for your movie, why'd you even include him in the first place?
Right.
Include a different mutant who doesn't have to die like this.
Like, why'd you...
It was really rude.
You shouldn't have done Darwin that way.
Yeah, he didn't deserve this.
He did not.
You just didn't know what to do with him at a certain point because he was too OP.
Yeah, pretty much.
That was basically it. Yeah, there are very few other problems I have with the movie, but those are basically it. Some of the effects with angels flying look a little funny too.
There's some shots,
but it was made in 2011.
There's some shots that are kind of they're a little funny now. They're a little, I wouldn't have done that shot, but aside from that, it's actually...
they had to dangle her from a helicopter to get some of those shots.
No, I mean,
God bless her.
No, I mean, in general, there are shots in this movie that are still kind of like...
They're still a little weird. Yeah, and then there's the...
but in general,
the weird decision where they couldn't really decide if they wanted because they got rid of the originally, like, the story had, like, this threesome, like, love triangle thing between Erik and Charles and Moira, and they scrapped that.
No,
the
they
thing
made it
is
Mystique
that
instead.
the movie kind of has this weird thing, this weird dynamic with Charles and Raven and Erik.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They scrapped it and put Mystique in there instead.
But it doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't.
Because then you have, like, my questioning Charles and Raven's relationship, because they should act like siblings, and for the most part they do, up until you have, like, these weird scenes where she's like, would you date me? Or
walking around
naked and trying to make a point, when it's like, yeah, of course he's gonna freak out. You're his sister. He doesn't need to see that.
He's literally lived with you and basically helped raise you like his sister. Why the fuck is he gonna want to suddenly bang you?
Yeah, it makes zero sense.
And because you can't get with him, you go shack up with Erik? The fuck? Because
Erik is the one person who...
This whole dynamic...
It makes her, gives her a sense of, self-worth, which is sad, because her self-worth should come from herself, not a dude.
Like, I'm just gonna say...
And, like, the one line that she uses to describe her self-worth comes from the chick that she gets mad at Charles for hitting on.
Yeah, and then mocks later.
The fuck?
This whole...
Mystique's writing's very weird.
I mean, I'm just gonna say it right now that I do not like this weird triangular thing they were trying to do.
Yeah, it's
with this.
I wish they just removed that part.
I hated,
because the relationships would have made a lot more sense.
No, I hated that they did it in this movie, and I really hated that they made it like this emotional crutch in fucking Days of Future Past. I hate that it ends up sounding like the reason that Erik and Charles are fighting over Raven. I hate that J-Law's Mystique, for some fucking unknown reason, suddenly becomes the new Wolverine of this new trilogy. None of it makes any sense.
I will get to really Mystique in other episodes, but yeah, I don't even dislike Jennifer Lawrence as an actress. I just have issues with, again, the writing and making Mystique a main character, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't.
I get that you needed that foil there, because you can't just do Charles and Erik by themselves. It gets kind of boring. You need someone there to temper Charles being an absolute nerd. I get that. I fully get that. Yeah. The sibling dynamic, I don't even hate. I like it. I actually really like the sibling dynamic, but when you try and turn it into this weird love triangle thing because you didn't do it with Moira, also doesn't make sense when Charles is way more keen to hit on Moira anyway.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre to me, and I don't really know why it was left that way. I don't know if that is the editing there, because it very well could be, but some of the scenes are just kind of codified really weirdly.
It makes
no sense. And it's like, that is his sister, can we not? I'm kind of grossed out right now.
It is, because that's what it is. It's gross, it's weird, it makes no sense, it feels weirdly forced, and it just... I still, to this day, I don't understand these choices.
No, there are some I feel like that may have been one of, like, the lingering things from when this used to be just, like, a sole Magneto origin.
Maybe.
Because they need to explain his relationship with Mystique. Because the original trilogy made that such a thing. Up until the end, when he just dismisses her because she looks like a normie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, can we talk about how, like, they bang and then the camera, like, pans up her unclothed scale
body? I hate that scene with Charles in the kitchen when, like, the camera is, like, caressing her curves.
It's so
That
weird.
is one of those moments where I'm like, that was male gazy. I really wish she hadn't done that. I understand it with Emma because that's half of her character. Yeah, that's what she does. That's what she projects at people.
Yeah, Emma.
Why are you doing this to Jennifer Lawrence?
Emma's basically the personification of, like,
playing on males.
Of fan service.
Yeah, but basically. She's also like, that's half of what she does. If it's not a power, she's just there to play on sexual desire and getting what she wants out of what other people want. Basically, that's the whole point of her being a telepath and being sexy at the same time. She knows what she's doing. I don't necessarily always love that as a story trope.
I mean, sure,
but
you could...
I at least understand it with Emma more than, again, that weird caressing of Jennifer Lawrence's hips and her side boob. Like, I'm just like, I don't need this.
I get it. You could definitely
You really wanted to show off the makeup. I get it. She went through hell to go through the makeup in this movie because it gave her allergic reactions and shit. I get it. But maybe don't do it like that.
Like, you could literally argue in the comics that Mystique does do the same thing Emma does and plays with people, fucks with their heads. But this is baby Mystique before
baby Mystique who's not that comfortable with herself in order to do this. Also, if you were going to do that shot, you should have done it when it was of her own volition, maybe with Erik, rather than opposed to her brother across the room, because then it does give the wrong connotation, and it's part of one of those things that further emphasizes this love triangle that really shouldn't be there and isn't always there, but when it is there, it's really just gross and kind of awkward.
I don't like it.
No, I love so much of this movie, but there are little moments like that where I'm just like,
why are you pushing this?
Why are we doing this?
Why are you trying to make this a thing?
I
don't want this to be a thing.
It's like when you're watching The Kingsman and you get to the end and they have that really awful anal joke. And you're just like, why? Did we even have to include this?
Like, why?
Why? Because the rest of this movie was so good, and then you just do that.
Or you could just make Eggsy gay. It's fine.
No. We can't have that.
Clearly.
Can't have that, even though Taron can and willingly does play queer men.
Yeah.
No. Anyway, that's not for here either. It's just, there are weird male-gazy moments, even in a lot of Vaughn movies in general.
Speaking of the gay, the chemistry between Charles and Erik is off the charts.
Oh my god, it's so good.
At least until Cuba happens.
Yeah,
and then it all goes downhill.
Oh, yeah. Toxic breakup, hardcore. It gives me Revenge of the Sith vibes. Just like hardcore breakup, no one's taking well.
No.
But also like, yeah, dude, you're the reason he got shot in the back.
Yeah.
Like, they also have Charles say some really heinous shit that he does not think through in that moment.
No, he does not.
And you can tell, like, that's intentional. That's not one of those things where I'm like, oh, why in the fuck did you include that? No, like,
that was
his whole, like, they're just taking orders thing. Yikes. But an intentional yikes.
It's very intentional.
Because it's part of Charles's, what is the word I want? Privilege. That he does not think about it the way that Erik thinks about it. Fine.
And it's enough to
fully understand that.
And it's the thing that sets Erik off.
Yes, fully understand that. 100%.
But yeah, their chemistry was amazing. So all of it was really good, and then you get to Cuba and you have Erik, for some fucking reason, as Charles experience what it's like to have a coin go through his fucking brain.
He makes Charles literally experience someone else's brain death.
And then
for a telepath, that is horrifying.
Talk about fucking body horror.
That is and that's not even addressing the part that Erik is the reason that Charles
got shot.
And
he's paralyzed.
And is paralyzed. No. You have that body horror all on its own. But he literally telepathically experiences what it is like to die through someone else. It isn't just, oh, it hurt a little bit.
No.
Oh, he's empathic to Shaw. No. He literally experienced this without the physical sensation of it happening.
Yeah, it literally experienced the coin rolling slowly through Shaw's brain and killing him while being connected to him. That is multiple levels of fucked up. That is some fuckery like the likes of which we haven't seen before.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said for Charles' power in general, not just the writing, but Charles's power in general. Where the moral lines there are, where the lines of agency are in a lot of things. Like, there are a lot of questions to be asked about telepathy. I fully understand that. Get it. But, wow, Erik.
That was a rough scene to watch.
It's always a rough scene to watch. I'm just like, Jesus, dude.
Like, it's been a while since I've watched First Class, and the scene leading up to it, like, in the room with the mirrors and the lighting and the correct uses of Dutch angles.
Oh, God, it's so good.
It's so good, and then you get to that scene and you're like, holy shit, this is way more messed up than I remember it being.
I mean, yes, and we're supposed to watch that and feel that as Erik's villain turn, because it is.
Because
he is basically becoming Shaw.
Yeah.
Fine. fully understand that. But I just want to impress on the gravity of what Charles actually experienced right there.
Yes.
And his willingness to still forgive Erik after that.
Yeah.
Not even including the part where he gets shot. Not even that.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
The fuck? That's a lot. That's a lot to unpack.
It is.
That's
just,
a lot to process.
This movie is a lot. Like, it's actually very heavy and very serious when it wants to be, and I really appreciate that.
And I just want to say, for all the Cherrick shippers out there, it's those scenes in that very short time span that make me go, okay, you know what? I see where the ship came from, but I'm not shipping it after that moment. There's no way in hell that that's even remotely healthy for either party.
No. I mean, yes, Days of Future Past does still treat them like, jilted exes.
They do.
Absolutely.
And see, that made sense. That made all the
100%.
sense. What
100%.
didn't make sense was them trying to shove Raven in that mix. I'm like, no. You don't need her. You just have it between them, and that's enough.
Like, I get it from Charles's, perspective of trying to make sure that his sister doesn't literally murder someone.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get to this.
She kind of already.
With Days of Future Past. But
spoilers, Charles. She probably already has.
He doesn't
want to
think about that. Okay, like he's. We'll get to this with Days of Future Past. I don't want to drag Days of Future Past into this too much.
She's probably already fucking done it.
I mean, yes, probably. Yes, probably.
Murder, death, killed people.
I'm sure she has. So moving on from that. The movie actually...
Suffice to say, everyone in the cast was pretty great, with the exception of January Jones. Kevin Bacon...
But again, I still don't know how much of that is her fault.
Kevin Bacon was great. J-Law was, she was doing...
She was fine.
Yeah, she was fine, doing the best she could in shitty makeup, I get it. Everybody else was pretty good.
The casting of Charles and Erik is absolute perfection.
Yes. It is inspired.
No one can convince me otherwise.
It is absolutely inspired.
It's absolutely perfect.
And without them, this movie would not have worked.
Without them, none of these prequel movies would have worked.
I also just really liked Oliver Platt and his little...
He was very cute.
He was very cute. But that said, that's the end of the acting, and now we can go into cinematography.
Yeah, so the movie actually had 4 different cinematographers just so that it could actually look the way that Vaughn wanted it to look.
Well, okay,
but the main cinematographer is John Matheson, who we've covered with Logan prior, but his reminders of the other things that he's made: Gladiator, Phantom of the Opera, Kingdom of Heaven, Ridley Scott's Robin Hood, Man from U.N.C.L.E., and Multiverse of Madness.
Good.
He makes so much
Marvel,
specifically showy stuff.
Yes,
that stands on its own as this like showpiece. That's what I think about Multiverse of Madness. It doesn't really. It feels more like a Raimi movie than a Marvel movie to me, but we went over that.
Well, that's also a lot due to Raimi's camera work on top of the cinematography and the color use and all that.
Yeah, and then you have Man from U.N.C.L.E. looks very specifically like its own thing.
God,
it looks a lot like this movie.
It does.
To be
That's
fair.
what I was about to say.
But it's the same.
When I first watched Man of U.N.C.L.E., I kept thinking about First Class.
Well, I mean, it's the same time period, similar dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Armie Hammer literally almost wears the same costume
as Erik. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he does. I forgot about that one outfit with the hat.
Yes.
Oh my god. You just reminded me of
almost literally the same costume.
But yeah, he's also done a bunch of Ridley Scott movies.
Kingdom of Heaven,
Gladiator, Robin Hood.
Okay, we love Gladiator, yes. You have not yet seen Kingdom of Heaven.
No, I have not. Not for lack of trying, though.
And I can say that I know people rag on Kingdom of Heaven a lot, but man, that is one really gorgeous looking movie for the most part.
I also haven't seen Robin Hood aside from the clips you keep sending me of Oscar Isaac.
Yes, because he's the main reason to watch it.
I mean, fair, but I like the look of those at the very least.
I just love it when Oscar Isaac is talking, then all of a sudden he just starts yelling. It's great.
I love Oscar Isaac. That is not for this episode either.
No,
to be fair.
not this episode.
We'll get there. So there's some weird things with the way that this was set up. It was 5 cinematographers, so it was 4 additional cinematographers. John Matheson did about 45 to 55% of the film himself, and then you had the assistant cinematographers and 4 assistant directors
Oh my goodness.
to make this look exactly the way that they wanted it to.
Jesus.
But on top of, like, the look, you also had visual effects coordination done by, like, the head designer John Dykstra, who did a bunch of stuff for the original Star Wars.
What was his name?
Dykstra.
Okay. I just wanted to make
His daughter was on Heroes of Cosplay.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I heard that right.
Dykstra. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it, but that is his name. He's the guy who came up with a lot of, like, the weird model shots that they used for Star Wars.
Oh.
Like the Death Star stuff. He's the guy who basically came up with the camera work.
Shit, yeah.
For, like, the Death Star trench.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, he did, like, a lot of the visual effects for the original Star Wars. He said the biggest difficulty I can read was the tight schedule. It was slightly less than a year, and I've never done anything like that before. Spider-Man was frequently 2 years, so I think he did stuff on Raimi's Spider-Man as well. He's done stuff all over the industry, but most well-known for Star Wars, obviously.
Yeah.
Because there's, like, a specific effect that they used in the original Star Wars that's actually named after him now.
Nice.
Because they didn't exist before that. And then you also have the pub that they use in Oxford, quote unquote, and it's called the Eagle, which is supposedly next to the famous Bridge of Sighs in Oxford, but this pub doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's not in Oxford. It's not a thing. It actually seems to be a reference to the Eagle pub in Cambridge, where Crick and Watson infamously announced their solution to the structure of DNA in 1953.
Oh.
Which is extremely relevant to Charles's research, his thesis, his everything, and, you know, the whole movie in general. But again, it would make a lot of sense that they're doing that, but it was in Cambridge, not Oxford.
Well, I mean, they were just doing it for convenience's sake.
I'm sure, but also to just have little nod in there, you know?
I mean, Cambridge and Oxford are both huge universities anyway.
Yes.
So.
But yeah, that's why they did. They probably didn't want to make it too on the nose either, to be fair. But yeah, so that's what I had with cinematography. Then with the soundtrack, the composer was Henry Jackman, who we covered with Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
That's why I like it so much.
That's why it's so good.
Fuck.
This soundtrack is literally my favorite X-Men soundtrack of all of them. It's got its own everything. It sounds kind of like a Bond movie, but isn't a Bond movie. The original theme was actually very Superman-esque, but it was slowed down for the credits so that it didn't sound so triumphant, basically.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want it to sound too, you know, basically like the music in the first Thor.
No.
Because it probably would have sounded a little like that, and that doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, because that's Patrick Doyle.
Yeah.
You can't replicate Patrick Doyle.
You also had Magneto and Shaw's themes actually resemble one another to highlight their twisted dynamic.
Yeah.
Of, like, sort of father-son, but not quite.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weird, twisted family dynamics in this with not real families.
Or, like,
very weird.
Well, I mean, see, Erik mentioned...
Or found families, even. Frankenstein's monster. Yeah.
When, basically, Frankenstein's monster at the end of the book is like, you know...
He was kind of my father.
Yeah, he literally says, this man was my father.
Yeah.
So...
Pretty much. So you have that... And then the Rage and Serenity theme, which is the one I'm pretty sure they use over that whole moment with Charles and Erik and the satellite, was actually reused in the second Kingsman movie.
Boo.
I don't know why. I don't remember when. I only watched that movie once because that one was actually not one I liked.
Boo.
I loved the Elton John stuff in that movie. The rest of that movie was...
Yeah, weird on.
It was really rough. We're not going to go over that.
No.
But yeah, apparently they reused that theme in another Matthew Vaughn movie.
Weird.
So,
and random.
Yeah, but I love the music in this. It doesn't really sound like another X-Men movie. I don't really want it to. It sounds perfect. It fits the time period. Once you get to the other movies, and we'll get to this with the other movies, but like the soundtracks start sounding very old school X-Men.
I actually really like Days of Future Past soundtrack.
To be fair. I mean, we'll get to that. But they start sounding more traditionally old school X-Men versus this one really standing out on its own.
From what I've heard of the Dark Phoenix soundtrack that Hans Zimmer did, that
also wasn't a Bryan Singer movie. We'll get to that when we get to Dark Phoenix, but yeah, that one also wasn't.
I'm just saying, there's
the
some
Bryan Singer movies start to sound like other Bryan Singer movies. How about that?
I'm just saying, some of these soundtracks do not all sound alike.
No, they don't, but the Bryan Singer ones kind of all start to sound like Bryan Singer ones.
Except Days of Future Past.
Even then, I'll get to that when we get to that episode, because I actually have notes on that. Not for here. So, your overall rating for this movie out of 5. Even with the things you don't, or taking into account the things you do like, things you don't like.
I'm probably going to give it a 4.5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that stops it from being a full 5 is, the weird triangular shit they're trying to do with Mystique and Erik and Charles. I know,
cutting it out, but including it, but cutting it out.
I'm just... It's still... Like, after all these years, it still bothers me that it's there and what they're trying to do, and it just really takes the enjoyment out for me when it happens. For the most part, I still really enjoyed this movie. I still think it's a really great movie. I still really think it's a great X-Men movie.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
It's a good movie on its own, but it's a great X-Men movie. I think the cast is really solid. I love Fassbender as Magneto. I absolutely adore James McAvoy as Charles. But man, that weird triangular shit still bothers me. Something fierce.
Like, as much as I agree with you, and I would probably also rate it a 4.5, which puts it below Logan, to be fair, because Logan is, like, perfect.
Well, yeah, Logan's perfect, and Logan wrecks me every time I fucking watch it.
I still think this is my favorite X-Men movie, even regardless of me being able to recognize that Logan, filmmaking-wise, is a better product. This one's still probably, like, my favorite X-Men movie. Period. Where X2 used to hit that for me.
Yeah.
At the time, but I mean, X2 hit that for a lot of people back when it came out.
Yeah.
But overall, with everything that's been out now, I think it is still my favorite X-Men movie, regardless of the fact that, again, I can recognize that Logan is a better movie.
I mean, that's fair.
Mm-hmm. But I would still probably put it at a 4.5 for the same reasons.
Yeah.
Really, like, the story stuff that just doesn't quite make enough sense, doesn't quite land.
And it just feels
Darwin.
Really... Yeah, the Darwin
I can't
thing...
give you a 5 for Darwin. I'm sorry. Yeah. That was not a smart move.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too, that always takes me out every time I see it.
I'm just like, Darwin doesn't deserve this. We just got to know him.
And he was great.
I loved him. What the hell?
I did, because it's like, he would have been great for the X-Men, and then you just take him out, and it makes zero fucking sense, and I don't like it.
Yeah, also, again, we'll get to this in the next episode, because otherwise I'm going to go on a tangent for about another hour about what I really wished we'd done with Darwin, but that is not for here. That is for when we get to Days of Future Past.
Yeah, all in all, it's still a very solid movie for me.
God,
it's still a great
It's still a great movie. It just has some weird moments
that
are really weird.
It has weird moments. It has story beats that honestly just don't fit inside a script that's already so good as it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Especially, I don't know if, like, that triangle was added because they just didn't feel that, like, the Raven Hank thing worked well enough, which, to be fair, it was kind of boring. I could have, like, given it or taken it, but I'd still take it over this triangle that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But then that makes even less sense when you shoehorn the whole thing with Erik on top of it. Like, I know that they were trying to allude to Mystique just taken off at the end.
Yeah.
And she does. She just ditches Charles.
Yeah.
What the hell, Raven?
I'm gonna leave this guy who basically raised me from when I was a child lying bloody and shot in the sand. I'm just gonna leave him there. Bye!
To be fair, he does tell her to go, but still.
Well, that's...
Like, there's very little, like, pause.
There's zero hesitation on her part. That's where it comes from. There's zero hesitation on her part. Got my jumpsuit zipped down with my titties out, you know?
Mutant proud!
Mutant proud! You're laying in the sand dying, but I'm proud with my titties out. I'm going with Erik. Bye!
Bye! We're gonna go break him out of jail. Bye! Yeah,
that's
like,
the
so
whole vibe, and it kills me.
Oh god, and on top of that, like, Magneto's end costume. What the fuck were you thinking?
Erik, if you're so gay, where the fuck is this fashion?
Like, no, I loved the colors, whatever, but when you get to what he did to that helmet, it is an absolute crime.
It is, it's a crime against fashion.
What in the hell were those little horn things on the front of it? Like, give it a paint job and leave it alone, but it's fine.
Give it a paint job and leave it alone. You don't need this weird little beetle horn shit on top. What the fuck?
I don't get it. I mean, it is very Bond of them, but it's so silly. It's just so silly.
Yeah, that's the one bone that I would pick with Ian McKellen's, like, oh, Eric's gay, and I'm like, not in this movie. How do you explain that helmet, sir? That's some bullshit.
Lacking some fashion sense over here, Erik, please. I mean, we're all embarrassing when we're young, apparently, so, you know, it's fine.
Like, I understand he wanted to make it different from Shaw, but there were better ways to do that. Mm-hmm. There were better ways!
There were better ways.
And you did not find them, sir. Mm-mm. God. Fuck.
Yeah. Okay, so that said, thank you for listening to this episode of FANSPLAINED.
Titties.
God, stop it.
Bloobs out. Really?
God.
They're bloobs. They're not even boobs. They're blue boobs. Bloobs. And you're keeping this in, damn it. No cutting.
This just happened.
No cutting.
Oh my god, I can't believe this just happened. Thank you for listening to this episode of FANSPLAINED. If you enjoy what we do, consider donating on Coffee.
It's the 60s. Who cares?
Fuck. Everything we make goes right back to the production quality of the show. This right here.
This quality entertainment. Yes.
We appreciate all of our subscribers. Thank you for sticking around after this and everything you do. And we're thankful for anything from Hulk smashing that like button to your questions and comments on each episode, and especially sharing the show with your friends. Why you'd want to at this rate, I don't know. Jesus. FANSPLAINED is a weekly media criticism and deep dive podcast, and we're currently still working our way through the chronological order of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Next episode, we'll still be continuing our multiversal hiatus with X-Men Days of Future Past.
Which we get even more bloobs than that one, I guess.
Stop! Oh my god.
Look,
we have to an episode.
We have to make some humor out of this because it's a bit of a downer in the next one.
It's a bit of a downer. You can find our updates here on YouTube as well as on Twitter and Coffee at FANSPLAINED. If you want more of our conversations on the MCU and other fandoms,
why wouldn't you want these conversations?
Please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell for new episode notifications. So until next time, Salt Shakers, this has been Ryan
and
with the FANSPLAINED podcast, and we'll see you next episode.